Before we get into today's episode, I want to share something that I think a lot of you need to hear about. Heart of Medicine 2026 is an international gathering of compassionate leaders in medicine. Doctors, nurses, allied health clinicians, coaches, healthcare leaders, all coming together July 29 through 31 at Voyagers Ayers Rock Resort in Central Australia. And yes, it's in Uluru, the spiritual heart of Australia. Because this event is intentional about where it places you, not just what it teaches you. You'll learn from world-class faculty about heart-centered care, compassionate leadership, and what it actually looks like to build a longer, more fulfilling career in medicine. You'll leave with the skills, community, and honestly, your spirit a little bit more intact. This is not a typical CME box check. This is the kind of gathering that reminds you medicine is still worth fighting for. I'll be there, and I'd love to see you there. Registration is limited because the resort is remote and intimate. So don't sit on this one. Link is in the show notes.
Welcome to Heartline, Change-Making in Healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. Andrea Austin, a board-certified emergency physician, physician development coach, and educator. After years on the front lines, I've learned that real change in healthcare starts within. Each episode invites you to explore the inner work that unlocks clarity and bold leadership, because healing systems through change-making begins with following our heartlines.
Hey, Heartline family, it's me, just me today, in my new home office, which I really like, in Pensacola, Florida. I had planned to have a guest on today, and she had to cancel for a very good reason. And I'm sending her lots of love in this difficult season of her life, and I hope she'll be able to come on the show a later day. But instead of just opening my email or doing something else, I just thought it's been a minute since I just talked with the listeners of this podcast. And there's been a lot going on. You know, I really haven't released too many new episodes with the move from San Diego to Pensacola. So I want to do more of these episodes where we can just have a conversation. And I think listeners of this podcast know that I love Brene Brown, and she does a segment, I believe it's called On My Mind. So I'm kind of taking a page out of her book, and I'm calling these On My Heart episodes because this is Heartline. So I want to talk to you about something that's been on my heart. And I hope wherever you are, you're on your walk, maybe you're just on a beach somewhere, you can take some time to really let this concept wash over you. So this is something that really changed the way that I see my own story and the stories of the people that I coach. It's called the tall poppy. I learned this term from a colleague in Australia, and the image is really simple, but it hit me really hard. You know, there's a few concepts that like once you learn that you look at the rest of your life and you're like, I wish I would have known this so much sooner. So I said poppy, like the flower. So imagine a poppy. So you've got to feel the poppies. They're all blooming at around the same height. And then there's one that grows a little taller. Maybe it's the soil. Maybe it's where the sunlight lands. Whatever the reason, this poppy is exceptional. It's doing something really well, and it's growing taller than the others. In a healthy ecosystem, that's a beautiful thing. But in a dysfunctional one, that tall poppy makes other poppies feel uncomfortable. Instead of asking, how do we help the others grow? The instinct is to cut that poppy down. It's to make it fit in with the rest of the field. That is what tall poppy syndrome is. And here's the part that really stops me cold every time I think about it. It happens in medicine a lot. It happens in community shops, in academic shops, in departments and programs and committees that say that they are committed to excellence. We say we value innovation and leadership and courage, and then quietly And sometimes not so quietly. We cut people down for embodying exactly those things. Maybe you're really good at organizing, and that starts to get under people's skin. Maybe you build something new and it becomes really successful, and the credit gets migrated to somebody else. Maybe you ask really hard questions and you find yourself increasingly on the outside. If any of that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Here's where the tall poppy concept gets connected to another concept we've talked about many times on the podcast. When you're a tall poppy, and I've been there, one of the most common tactics to cut you down is gaslighting. The problem you identified, suddenly it doesn't exist. Or it did exist, but you didn't really fix it. Someone else did. Or you're being too sensitive, reading too much into things, making mountains out of molehills. Gaslighting is insidious because it attacks your perception. And for those of us who are high achievers, physicians especially, you're trained to question yourselves, to check your work, to look for an error. And so it's really easy to turn that instinct against us. Once I had the language of the tall poppy, things that had happened earlier in my career finally started making sense. Events I had filed under, I must have done something wrong, got a different label. Not victimhood. I want to be clear about that. Something more accurate. And a shift started happening, and it was incredibly freeing. Since I started coaching, I see this pattern constantly. People come to me after not getting a promotion, after not being selected for a leadership role that they were obviously very well qualified for. And here's the thing about physicians. Many of us get to mid-career and we've never been rejected. Think about it. You worked hard to get into undergrad. You got into the medical school, often of your choice. You matched into residency. The system, for all of its flaws, it does reward this effort. And for many of us, the first professional rejection is gutting and nothing that we've ever experienced before. It shakes your identity. And so we sit with that. And hopefully we do the self-reflection work and think that reflection is genuinely valuable. Coaching can help fast track that. And sometimes when you dig in, when you talk to the people involved, and when you look at the facts of the situation and do some additional information gathering, the reason you didn't get selected doesn't always hold up. Sometimes you didn't get the job because you were a tall poppy. The work made other people uncomfortable. The pace of your contribution felt threatening. The quality of your output highlighted gaps elsewhere that they don't want to fix. And then there are harder conversations about fairness, equity, and discrimination. Those conversations are real. They need to happen. And I want to acknowledge them without glossing over them, because sometimes the tall poppy story intersects with bias. And those are not exactly the same things, but the two things, phenomenon, can be happening at the same time. And so then bigger questions start to develop. Do you file a formal complaint? Is it HR? Do you talk to legal? And these are very personal decisions. And I will say these are also areas that mentors and coaches can be very helpful for. But what I've found in my career is when you're a tall poppy, you need to find a field with other tall poppies. You need to get to a place that celebrates you and when your career can really take off. So I think the concept here is it's a personal decision about accountability and what accountability looks like to you and how much energy you want to put into getting that accountability. And that answer can change as well. I can think back to a few situations where when I was close to it, the accountability piece seemed really important. And with more time and distance, I began to realize that it wasn't my job to teach that organization or that person, that toxic leader, a lesson. That was additional work being placed on me that was not fair. And so the healthiest thing you can do is when you're in a dysfunctional place, sometimes is just to leave and move on and find that field of tall poppies. I also want to pause here and be really honest about something. Being a tall poppy doesn't exempt you from growth. It doesn't mean every conflict is someone else's problem, every criticism is a cut, and every piece of feedback is gaslighting. Tall poppies have to stay humble, and maybe we have to work harder to do that. We need to seek diversity of opinion, including opinions that challenge them. We have to build coalitions, and we have to do the relationship work. Sometimes there's genuine skills that need to be built. Sometimes coaching can really help with that, and it can really spur a reckoning. And these can be really difficult things to work through. But it's always where the meaningful change happens. It's always at that edge. To use the metaphor of, residency, I was just talking about getting ready for our residents to arrive. And, the challenge is you're always trying to push them into the growth zone. You don't want to push them so hard that they crumble, but you don't want to be comfortable. And I think that's the struggle for us too, finding that growth edge and doing that really deep work of self-reflection and thinking about thinking, metacognition. What I've seen in my coaching clients who thrive is they're honest about both realities simultaneously. They can say the system cut me down unfairly, and here's what I'm working on. Both can be true. And holding both is a kind of sophistication that not everyone can access. And so when you do that, you will become more of a tall poppy. And that can be its own struggle, because as you're doing that deeper work and you're in spaces where other people aren't doing that deep work, that's kind of the thing I'm struggling with right now. So if I'm going to therapy, if I've got a coach, I'm doing this reflection, and I'm surrounded by people that aren't, how do you be that leader that inspires other people to create the soil, allow the sunshine to come in for them to be tall poppies too? I don't have an answer for that one. Any listeners out there that do, drop a comment, because that's really what I'm finding to be the hardest part right now. As an emergency physician, I've seen firsthand what happens when people lose themselves in their work. That's why I built a coaching practice grounded in real data, not guesswork. When we work together, you'll start with a DISC assessment, which will generate a 40-page deep dive into your behavioral strengths, your motivators, and the workplace triggers that cost you the most. Then we bring in objective biometric data. We can use any number of wearable devices, including the Oura Ring, to understand how your sleep and recovery directly shape your capacity for joy and performance. This isn't a one-size-fits-all program. Every coaching engagement is customized to you, because the work of following your heartline looks different for everyone. If you're a healthcare professional ready to reconnect with why you started, visit the link in the show notes or head over to AndreaAustinMD.com. There's one other thing I've really noticed about the places where tall poppies thrive. The places they thrive are where disagreement is viewed as normal and even encouraged. Places where tall poppies thrive can hold diverse opinions without everything falling apart. As Dr. Brené Brown talks about, you can rumble in those places. There can be ruptures and repairs happen. Conflict can happen. You can agree to disagree. You can pause and say, we haven't gotten to an agreement on this, and we're going to have to keep coming back to this. This is a sticky one. This is complicated. There are many complexities to this issue that we're not going to solve in a single conversation on a single email thread. But you can get into that real conversation when it's uncomfortable and come out on the other side still in relation with the other. The capacity for this healthy conflict, for intellectual tension, for honesty, it's not common. It is possible though, And I have seen healthcare organizations that can do it. And so if you're not in one of those places, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. Although when you're in a place where it's lacking, it does feel like there's no place that exists that you can actually have healthy disagreements and functional conflicts. It exists though. So as we wrap up today on this monologue episode, I also want to just highlight how important community is for tall poppies in particular. I think many of us are struggling with social media, and is social media a place of community, or is it faux community? Is it performative? Is it real connections? And I really struggle with this because one of the best friends of this pod is Dr. Cheryl Martin from Australia. And the reason Cheryl and I are friends was Twitter, when Twitter was fun back in the day. That's where we started sharing different ideas and collaborating. And I don't really know if Cheryl and I would be as good of friends as we are today without social media. So it's complicated, right? What I have noticed is there is a real desire for connection and community. And many of us are skeptical of the people in control of social media and if those spaces are actually creating community or just advertising dollars. And by the way, one of the key drivers of keeping us engaged on social media is divisiveness. And so many of us are going underground. And what does that look like? Well, one space that I'm spending time in is the Physician Coaching Collective led by Dr. Sheeta Shaffi, also friend of the pod, Dr. Vanessa Calderon, and Dr. Chrissy Ott. This is a community for physician coaches. And if you're interested in that, you can head over to their website, the Physician Coaching Collective, and learn more. I found the conversations in that community to be very real, to really embrace the whole person, and to also be a place as a coach if you're looking for support on how to build your business and how to share information and resources. It's a very wonderful community. So if you're a coach listening, consider the Physician Coaching Collective. The other community I've talked about on this podcast before is Recalibrate. And so Recalibrate is the 6-month program that I completed a few years ago. And Recalibrate is a program developed by Cherie Johnson, another friend of the pod. Cherie also now has her own podcast, so I hope you'll pop over and check out her podcast. Cherie's Recalibrate program is 6 months. And for those of us in America, we're going to do a virtual option. She does have some in-person programming available in Australia. But Cherie and I are really interested in expanding Recalibrate. There's only been a few Americans, kind of very, very sporadically, that have been part of Recalibrate. But Cherie and I are really interested in doing another Recalibrate program, perhaps in the fall of 2026. And it's a 6-month journey where you really, as the name implies, recalibrate you on a personal and professional level. Each month, there's a different area of focus and emphasis, and the program has a combination of group and individual coaching. And what's really great about that program is once you go through the 6-month journey, you're able to access the Recalibrate community, which has a very robust and active WhatsApp group. And that community is really, if you're a listener of Heartline and you're somebody that's committed to healthcare being different, that it can be compassionate and human-centered, and we can practice medicine wholeheartedly, that's the community you really want to be in, because it's people that are doing the work and we're sharing stories. You know, sometimes we're bringing a bad day at work and how do we recover from it? Sometimes it's crowdsourcing information. Sometimes it's sharing new literature or a really helpful resource. But it's a great community. And I also really appreciate the globalness of the community and being able to see things from multiple perspectives. And something that we've talked about, sometimes in America, we can feel like a lot of our healthcare problems are because we're in America. And the great thing about that community is it reminds me that our colleagues in Canada, in New Zealand, in Australia are also struggling with a lot of the same problems. Some are different, but there's a lot of same threads that are happening in other countries as well. So if you're interested in the group coaching and individual coaching, I would love to co-facilitate a Recalibrate Wishery, and we're interested in doing that this fall. And I'm looking at my fall schedule, and I would really prefer to be coaching through Recalibrate this fall. So if you're interested in coaching with me, Recalibrate would be a really great way to do that. So as we close, I am going to just say a phrase that I've said many times. Healthcare is really, really hard right now. And so is just being a human. Yeah, I'm going through another phase right now where I just can't listen to the news. There's just too much going on right now. And it's really affecting my well-being. So I really have to only check in with the news right now about once a week. So healthcare is hard and being a human's hard right now. In this community of Heartline, we are a community of change makers. And we know healthcare in the world doesn't have to stay this way. We're not naive about the problems, and we are choosing to keep doing the work, to keep pushing, and to keep growing. So change makers and tall puppies, draw a Venn diagram. The overlap is enormous. If you're a change maker, you're a tall puppy. Community and coaching won't protect you from every hard moment, but they will make sure that you're not ever alone. And as a tall puppy, we'll help you find the field in which the soil is nourishing, and you can find your sunshine and find your other tall puppies. So if you're curious about either community, Physician Coaching Collective, or Recalibrate, shoot me an email at andrea@andreaaustinmd.com. I will link you to whatever resource. And if you're interested in individual coaching, maybe you're navigating your own tall puppy moment or season of life or something else, shoot me a message, andrea@andreaaustinmd.com. I'm also still checking my messages on Instagram and LinkedIn, so you can find me at Andrea Austin MD on either LinkedIn or Instagram, and I'm happy to set up a one-on-one to figure out what solution would be best. Individual coaching, linking you up with Recalibrate, linking you up with another coach that I know that I think would be a good fit for you. That's one of the things that's really important to me, is as much as I want to grow my coaching practice, my promise to you is if I'm not the right coach for you, I will make a referral. And I feel very, very strongly about that. So if you're having a hard time out there, or you're looking for something new, or maybe things are going really well, but you're facing a new challenge and you want to be able to crush it even a little harder, coaching can be that for you. Reach out. So until next time, take time for yourself, breathe, rest. You deserve it, and keep following your heart line.
Thank you for listening to Heartline, Changemaking in Healthcare. If this episode sparked something for you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend or colleague who's walking their own changemaker path. If you're interested in coaching, consulting, or speaking engagements, you can find me at andreaaustinmd.com or connect with me on LinkedIn and Instagram. I work with individuals and organizations who are ready to build meaningful, sustainable change without losing themselves in the process. The views expressed on this podcast are my own and do not reflect those of any organization I work for or with. This podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only and is not intended as professional advice, including but not limited to medical or psychological guidance. Until next time, keep following your heartline.